Has someone in your social circle ever been revealed as unscrupulous, addicted, sociopathic, etc.? Did you honestly get a sense that something was off about them? Yay. My friend Brian. He was essentially my best friend. Worked out with him. Rock limbed, chilled and hung out. Was a regular happy dude. Anyway, his mom found journals that he wrote explaining how he wanted to kill and eat his sister for putting his biological dad in jail. He's adopted. Later, after the police took him to a mental hospital, they found more journals hidden under the house explaining his plans to murder me. Other friends, his parents who adopted him, never would have expected him to do that. Lost my best friend. At least they caught him first. At least they caught him first. That's the important part. Enjoyed that. A friend of mine recently murdered another friend of mine. They had been close friends for years and were in the same main group of friends. We live in a small town, and they both were well known in the community. I would have never guessed that he would end up spending his life in prison. He was extremely talented musically and intellectually, and although I wouldn't have described him as warm, he was always funny and extremely rational. He never showed any signs of violent thoughts or behavior in the 5 years that I knew him. I'm still in shock about it all. Really. I've replayed every memory that I have with him and with the two of them. There is not a single thing that could have led me to believe he would someday murder her with no apparent motive. One day this summer, he was in a park and randomly attacked a woman with a knife. He got away before she called police. A few days later, he went to my friend's house after her parents had left for work. He tied her up in her bed and killed her. Her mom found her when she came home from work on her lunch break. The next night, her parents held a small vigil at their house. He attended. He texted me and few other friends, saying he was in shock. Thinking about that still gives me chills. However, he had been very sloppy cleaning up, so within a few days the police had gathered an overwhelming amount of fingerprint and DNA evidence and were able to arrest him. That is also confusing to me, because he was very intelligent, consistent, and meticulous. The trial will start next month. Our whole community is still sad, angry, and confused. It still feels like we're in a bad dream. None of it makes sense. A lot of people expect me to be angry at him. I can't. Every single memory I have with him is wonderful. My mind fails to make a connection between my friend and the crime he committed. I'm not angry. I am lost. Knew a guy in high school. He was on track team and the baseball team. He was very athletic and seemed very happy, but he always picked on the weaker kids like he could smell it in them. He had me a hard time to the point of tears because my mother was very ill. He seemed to fake emotions. Like he would watch for how people reacted and would do the same. Right out of high school he lost his baseball scholarship because they found out he was addicted to coke. He went to rehab the first half of summer. For a week maybe he was okay. Then there started being an increase in robberies in the area. A mother of 2 mentally handicapped children was bludgeoned to death one night while her husband was at work. The kids sat by her body for hours until they fell asleep in her blood. Husband came home, called the cops. The guy was on the news saying, "I hope they catch this monster," and crying. Left a Facebook post linking the story hoping that she gets justice. Then they found the baseball bat used to kill her and it was the same brand he used and covered in prints. He was high out of his mind and coming down, so he broke in to steal some cash. She caught him and he beat her to death. He seemed really emotionless when they arrested him, but was sobbing almost too dramatically at his hearing. He has been in jail for a while now, and I think last I heard he either killed or severely wounded his cellmate with a shiv. When I was in my first year of college, I was put into a group with 3 guys and 2 other girls. One of the guys really creeped me out. He was incredibly attractive, tall, fit, great hair, eyes and smile, and he was always very nice to me, but I couldn't help feeling very wary of him, especially when we were alone. I think he could tell I wasn't comfortable around him because he seemed to put a lot of effort into trying to be friends with me, the other 2 girls, and a lot of girls in our class loved him and would talk about him all the time. When he would offer me rides home or ask me to lunch, the other girls would always call me crazy for saying no. Right before Christmas break he stopped coming to school. His friends tried to get a hold of him, but he wasn't answering his phone. Someone said that he had gotten in a car accident. The next week, however, he was in the paper. Turns out he didn't get into a car accident but was arrested for brutally raping a 15-year-old girl. This was his third rape charge in the past 2 years. In the other 2 cases he was acquitted of the charges due to lack of evidence. Not only that, someone found an online blog of his where he would vent about how he was innocent and how God was testing him, and these girls were all Jezebels sent to turn him from his faith. He also wrote about me, how I was pure, an angel, and I was going to save him. I haven't seen or talked to him since. A buddy of mine I went to college with, and who I used to ride motorcycles around with and hang out with, recently up and murdered his mom one day, shot her and killed her. Nobody saw it coming. In hindsight he was always a little off, slow to react to emotional moments, etc. But I never figured he'd kill anyone, let alone his own mother. Really weird to find that out. A guy I used to be really good friends with in college slit his mom's throat. He was the nicest, most easygoing person ever with a huge heart. No one saw it coming. He went psychotic and tried to kill himself. When he was released from the hospital he went home and killed his mom. So tragic and insanely shocking, especially because he used to be over at my house 5 days a week. Scary. Used to play online with this guy. Cool dude. We talked a lot. Friends on Facebook. Almost met for a coffee in Oslo one time but the plans fell through. He was writing about Islam, he said, would probably be gone a while after the book was published. Last thing I remember was wishing him good luck on his upcoming book tour. Then the thing on Utøya happens. I see my friend's face in the paper and feel sick. I was friends with Anders Behring Breivik and wished him good luck on his book tour. I worked with a really weird guy once. He didn't really have any normal social skills. Hung out in the corner of the lunchroom by himself and just seemed off. He went missing for a few weeks and nobody knew what happened to him. Around a week after his disappearance his mom came by work looking for him. It was odd. He didn't quit. He just stopped coming to work. I guess we all kinda thought to ourselves that he had a mental breakdown or something and we forgot about him for a while. That is, until he showed up on the show Catch a Predator. Yay. He had brought a case of beer and rubbers to meet a little girl he met online. During the interview, he was just as awkward as he had always been at work. It was pretty creepy. I always wondered how it must be for the people who know these persons. I've been friends with a girl for maybe 6 years, the majority of which she was a fun, enthusiastic, if somewhat sensitive individual. The past 2 years, however, she has begun to recall traumatic parts of her childhood that were previously repressed that have sparked psychotic episodes. She started getting in fights, brandishing knives, threatening murder to friends. She stopped being able to differentiate reality from her imagination. It's really sad because no one wants to tolerate her anymore, for fear of their life. But I remember a happy, relatively stable best friend who still needs to be loved. When I was in middle school I befriended the new girl at school. She used to hang out with me all the time and I introduced her to all my friends. All was fine. Then she met my mom. Not 5 minutes after my friend left, my mom looked at me and said that girl is going to kill someone someday. I brushed it off and remained friends with her right up until I had to change schools. A year later, my dad came across my old friend's name in the newspaper. She had murdered her grandfather in his sleep. I never would have thought she would do that, but obviously my mom saw something I didn't. Ex-brother-in-law. Dude was both sociopathic and highly addicted to drugs and alcohol. No particular drug, whatever was available. And if he had to manipulate me, my sister, my family, his family, or just some random schmuck, so be it. He constantly owed people money, and would often ask me to spot him for more drugs when he already owed me significant amounts of money. And his reaction if I resisted was to turn it around as if I were the bad guy. After a couple of years of this I learned how to play his game and it often ended with him very angry. Mind you, dude was twice my size and a skilled fighter, but he would never kick your butt if he thought it might end your enabling of him. So I learned to keep that illusion going until finally one day my sister got wise and left his butt. I would have found a way to get him arrested. In our circle of friends, there was one guy who was a pathological liar. I think it started around 10th grade, but none of us really knew. The funny thing was, for most of high school, he had a twin brother that would out him all the time to us. By the time we all got to our senior year, we all called him out every single time he'd lie, and he'd always defend himself to the death, even when he lied about the stupidest crap. Really, we don't care if you're going to work or your girlfriends or your grandfathers, but apparently it was a big deal to him. None of us have heard anything from him since graduating, nor his brother, which is a bit of a shame. Last I heard of him, he was trying to pick up my ex-girlfriend after he'd spent all of high school making fun of me for dating someone like her. Back in 2004 I dated a girl who seemed normal enough during the first month or so of the relationship. She was very much into the kink scene, which, at the time, was very new for me. After the first month, however, something strange happened. She started getting insanely jealous for the strangest reasons. If a girl was so much as in my eye line, she'd lose her crap. Talking to female telemarketers meant that I was sleeping with them. Even my relationship with my sisters was brought into question. At first, I just dealt with it, probably because the sex was great. Them crazies. But, over time, other issues started to crop up. She would hide her computer usage from me, and flip out if I was even in the room. Turns out she was a member on a forum about incest. Knowing that she had been abused by her stepfather as a child, I had thought it was for survivors and thought nothing of it. And then it all came out in one horrible day and night that it wasn't for survivors. It was for proponents of incestuous relationships. She had been regularly fantasizing about having a child, so she had sex with it. No lie, I found stories she had written about just that, one of them graphic and violent, which involved having a young girl, 5 years old, as a sex slave. I lost my crap, broke up with her then and there and made it very clear that I wanted nothing further to do with her. For my troubles, she assaulted me. Then when I threatened to call the cops on her, she beat me to the punch. Because she was maybe 100 pounds soaking wet, and I had 100 pounds on her. Despite the fact that I had scratches all over me and she didn't have a mark on her. Guess who got arrested? Given a conditional sentence and forced into an abusive relationships program where I was treated like a scum of the earth woman beater and told that because I was the man, I must have been the violent one. Thankfully, not long after that I left the city I lived in altogether and started life fresh somewhere new. Haven't seen or heard from her since, and that's fine by me. Wow dude. Hope you're doing okay. One of my best friends in high school killed his 4-year-old daughter in cold blood for no apparent reason. Probably the most normal seeming of my whole friend group. This just happened recently, and I'm still shocked. One of my friends, let's call him Jim, used to go out with one of the girls from our group, and they had a daughter together. Their relationship didn't last, but they kept the baby and both took care of her. Anyway, last week I received a call from another friend of mine, who told me to come over. He had something important to tell me. Have you heard about Jim? No. What's with him? He's in prison. Dunno for how long, could be for life. Turns out that the previous Sunday, Jim broke into his ex-girlfriend's house, killed her, killed their baby daughter and left. I could not believe it. Just that Saturday night we were having a BBQ, the whole bunch of us, and he was fine, normal. That Sunday, after he did what he did, he came over to a friend's house and we were playing tabletop games. As usual, there was nothing off about him, just a regular guy, with his friends. He was found out when the neighbors started to smell the rotting bodies on the ex-GF house. He confessed everything and was turned in. I still don't understand what the heck went through his head. He was a regular, normal guy, who had some problems in his life, but who doesn't? He was a loving father. I know, I've seen him with his baby girl. We lost 3 of us. The woman, who was a dear friend, the baby who we've seen grow up since birth, and Jim. We don't know him anymore. To answer your question, no, nothing was off about him. He was playing tabletop games with us hours after he'd done the deed, and he seemed normal. I don't understand. Similar thing happened to my father. His bowling buddy was going through a rough patch with his wife and decapitated her on their front lawn while their daughter and I believe some neighbors watched. Guy I used to work with was super religious, family oriented, health conscious, etc. I told my boss I was certain he was tweaking and she thought I was off my rocker. Then the cops came by asking if we'd seen him. He had abandoned his truck on the side of the road and took off on foot. Truck was full of paraphernalia and a couple grams of ice. Boom. Told you B. I am the addict of my social circle. Everyone pretty much knew. They hate me now. I'm 4 months clean and hope to stay that way. It was hard having everyone turn against me, but it was a direct result of my actions and I have to learn to live with that. This is somewhat relative. I was talking to this guy at a party once at my house. I was wasted, however I'm not sure what his state of mind was. We talked about a few different things including his tattoo of Hannibal Lecter on his forearm, and some other movies that we liked that were similar to Silence of the Lambs. Turns out, about 6 months later, this guy brutally murders some girl in my hometown and tries to cover it up by hacking her up into pieces. They eventually found her body, and after a while awaiting his trial, he pleaded guilty to it all. I remember the first time I saw him in the local paper and thought how familiar he looked. They later reported his tattoo and all the memories about our conversation came back. A Hannibal Lecter tattoo should definitely raise some alarm. My last BF is a full-blown sociopath. When he first was posted to our unit army everyone thought he was fun, he joked around. He was a single dad so we all figured he was doing his best. Our relationship sprang up pretty quick and it didn't take long for the facade to start cracking. The lies, the cheating, his absurd behavior, always readjusting his Facebook page, adding and deleting me for petty reasons. Our breakup a few months ago is so insane even soap opera writers would be in awe. I went overseas to visit some friends. Halfway through a friend of mine at another base sent me a message saying I think your boyfriend just married my colleague. He had been having an online affair with a girl at another base and while I was overseas he married her. She's moving here next year. I will have to work with her. It was devastating. Absolutely destroyed me. I demanded answers from him and he laughed in my face, mocked me and threatened to ruin my career if I said anything about what he had done. I reported his threats and he was kicked out of the unit, but still on the base. One day I had a boyfriend. The next day he was someone else's husband who was humiliating me and threatening me. No remorse, no empathy. Found out my whole family including my dad were alcoholics and for some reason I started getting all of these realizations. That wasn't water my dad was always drinking in a glass or that wasn't always just coke. I know it's not like drugs or anything, but it came close to tearing my family apart. My dad was driving drunk one night and hit someone. Everyone was fine. He told me and I remember saying to him, "You could have died. I wouldn't have a dad and I would be alone." After I said that he hasn't drank since. I love my dad to death. I'm a little late, as always, but here's my story. I had recently been promoted to part-time manager on my first job ever. I was around 19 when I heard that a female store manager from another location in town had been murdered during a store burglary. The store wasn't opened yet, so I don't think we can call it a robbery. Anyway, I got really scared because now it was my duty to open the store alone in the mornings, just like she had. However, all my managers were very supportive and made me feel a lot better. We were like a family. That is, until we found out that our store manager was the one responsible for killing that girl. No one ever suspected him. The only reason he got caught was because he told his best friend and the poor guy couldn't live with the knowledge without doing something, so he told on him. The thing is, he really was like family to me. He even comforted my mom when she learned about the murder by saying that he'd make sure nothing happened to me or any of the other female employees. It's surreal thinking about the fact that if our store hadn't had working security cameras, perhaps it would have been me dead right now. My condolences to the girl's family. A guy in our group was an alcoholic from the time we met until he was popped for DUI. He came clean and told us he had been drunk almost every time we had seen him. None of us, not even his girlfriend, had any idea. I have a friend that something is off about. Small things like he will watch you from the corner of his eye when seeing something funny then laugh when you do in a weirdly fake way. It's almost like he is mimicking when to react because he doesn't know how. Saying that, he's probably elsewhere on here talking about his mate who stares at him when he laughs. Now I am concerned whether I'll laugh normal or not. Thanks. A girl in my friend group told us last year that she had a boyfriend who goes to a local expensive university. Most people believed her. Then, she started telling people that her mom hated her boyfriend and that her mom was beating her because of it. She ended up telling a teacher who called child services, and my friend got pee at the teacher about it. This is where I stopped believing. She told us he was going to Turkey with him over the summer. When her supposed trip was over, she showed us pictures of him at spots and photos of places in Turkey. They all look like stock photos in my opinion. Come this year where she told us she was pregnant with his child. She told a lot of her teachers she was pregnant and got special treatment. She said she was getting an abortion, and the day her supposed abortion she said she was keeping it. She passed out in class. 2. She showed a photo of an ultrasound, but I still didn't believe it. Then, her cousin, who is in the same grade, found out and said none of it was true and was a lie. My friend group was pretty hurt by it, as she had acted like it was a game and had gotten things from people, such as teachers' baby clothes. One friend bought her a large amount of some kind of pills for pregnant people. Pardon my lack of knowledge there. I don't have a vagina, and got special treatment from teachers. I apologize for my bad storytelling. It isn't my strong point, and this story is hard to tell over text. I should also mention that she kept this up for a good 365 days. She also puffed her stomach out when people were looking. She also never apologized about it. Yup, I was best friends with a sociopath. One of the best friendships I'd ever had. Don't expect to have a friendship as great as that ever again. Really smart guy. He was extremely loyal to me, even if he often put me down. Looking back now, I guess it was to keep me in check. He used to manipulate people and tell me about it later. Not for malicious purposes per se, but to be in control, to have and retain power. It was mostly small things, like when walking down the street he would walk a little faster so that they would have to keep up with him. His friendships with most people revolved around power struggles. I had a feeling something was off when I first met him. His face didn't react to things properly. He never smiled, except for when other people were. It took him maybe a split second to realize this. He processed emotions really slowly. I could see the gears grinding his head as to how to react to certain events appropriately, and he confirmed this later. I don't have a problem with him. He is one of the kindest people I know. He's not a malicious, dangerous person. He has a moral compass, I think. He gets what's right and wrong. Not worth it being a societal reject, so he doesn't do bad things. Good friend, saved my butt many times. When we were younger he demonstrated very little empathy. Confirmed this too. Felt no empathy for people, and was very concerned about it. Haven't spoken to him in a while, but he seems to be getting better. He was always extremely opinionated and is now sort of into social justice, though that may be more of an opinion thing than an empathy thing. He seems to be a sociopath that respects the dignity of all humans. At the very least, a sociopath that abides by a personal value system. My closest friend is a decent, good person. He has said some ridiculously inconsiderate things. Failures of empathy, I like to call them. Like joking about my health problems, and is a manipulative bastard and has admitted to being one. He knows how I work and what he can get out of me. Still, he's never manipulated me in a way that would hurt my own interests. He's helped me through my problems, though I still strongly suspect he's done so to build favor with me. Most of the morally good decisions he's made have worked out well for him. He probably can feel some empathy, but there's no doubt he struggles with it. And I don't want to know what he did as a teenager. And he's not talking. He is just demonstrating value. It is all part of a system. Yes, a guy I played Xbox online with a lot killed both of his parents. He was always really nice, but something felt strange and a bit weird. Never thought much of it and just assumed he was maybe an awkward guy. I never met him IRL. So, it goes on for a long time, and then one day our friend group stopped seeing him online. A week or two later another friend tells me he went to jail. He killed both of his parents and threatened his siblings not to tell the police. My dog hated my friend's boyfriend. Just seriously hackled up and would growl if he, and only he, came into the house. Never went after him or anything, but my friend used to babysit my kids every once in a while, and I had to stop that in case he came by and we weren't home. I was worried about them interacting without me there. Personally, I thought he was sweet, if a little full of himself. I figured it was the beard, and he often wore a hat. My husband didn't like him either, always said there had to be a reason the dog didn't like him beyond looks. Turns out he was into downloading massive amounts of child pee. Totally fricked up my friend's mom's computer. He was living with them at a time that she needed for work and got her investigated. She also had to pay some kind of fine they could barely afford. He lost his job working with handicapped kids, and that cost him his visa. I will never doubt my dog again. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.